My body knows how to do it.
It's a girl.
As we speak, every second, a woman gives birth somewhere in the world. It may sound ordinary, but for the woman living it, birth is nothing like that.
Welcome to Born to be Wild, the podcast. We call in guests from Portugal and beyond to share real birth stories and lived experiences, and to explore what maternity care really feels like on the ground.
In this podcast, we invite you to listen, question, and sometimes unlearn what pregnancy, birth, and postpartum are supposed to look like.
For us, wild means staying connected to yourself, your body, and your choices, even when systems make that difficult.
So let's begin.
I think in 10 years, hopefully we'll look back and be like, oh my God, remember how things were? We have an inside joke with the founders of the associations, like we say, so that one day our daughters can say, really? It was like that?
So today we're joined by Sara do Vale, doula, founder, and one of Portugal's most outspoken advocates for respectful childbirth. You might have seen her on TV, in a discussion with the parliament, or in an article about maternity care in Portugal.
Yeah, she's everywhere. And it started over a decade ago. She started questioning maternity care in Portugal because it was still largely taboo. Women wouldn't speak about their birth experiences. And Sara helped break that silence. She co-founded one of the first associations in the country dedicated to birth rights and has spent many years so far challenging the current system to improve the woman's experience in maternity care.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And that's why we invited Sara, because she doesn't soften the picture. She speaks frankly about what women in Portugal actually encounter inside the system. For example, the pressure, the lack of informed consent, but also the gap between official policy and what happens behind closed doors. She also often talks about the structural dynamics that shape maternity care and the role and frequent sidelining of midwives, unfortunately, and why intervention rates remain so high, especially compared to other European countries.
True. So this is not a very comfortable portrait of the system that is it stands. But Sara also points to where pressure is building, where cracks are forming, and why she hasn't stopped fighting.
Yeah, and that's very hopeful because Sarah believes women deserve the full picture. And in her view, that picture can look very different from what you may have heard before. So let's dive in.
Hi, Sara. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, very happy to be here.
We're super glad to have you because we want to understand better how is it to give birth today in Portugal. But just before we start, it would be a good beginning to have a first quick introduction from yourself, like just in a few words, who you are, where you're coming from, what you're doing today.
I'm currently a doula, an activist, and through my own mothering and birthing experiences, I really did feel there's got to be a better way to do this. Of having a baby, of being, of thinking this, of supporting this. So in 2014, I did a doula course in the UK. And basically, at the time I was working for a financial services company and really felt like this is what I want to do with my life. So, but I couldn't obviously then quit my job straight away. So there was still this time when I had to kind of, align, if you will, that desire with reality. So I did the doula course in March with Nurturing Birth, and then it was in person, so it was in London. And then, I started supporting a few clients, but still, obviously, I had a full-time job, so really couldn't do it as much. And then in November, I really decided this is it. I can't do this anymore. This is what I want to do with my life. And when I still started supporting some births, I do remember asking people like, who do you talk to complain about these things? I mean, how can we change this? What? Why?
Yeah.
What's happening? And you were not a mom yet, right? When you started as
Was.
a doula.
Yeah, I
You
had two
were
kids
already a mom.
already.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's an important factor.
Yeah, I had two
Yeah.
kids already. So I really did. That's what actually made me want to do and take the doula course. I did have a doula for my second baby, and it was completely amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then people just said, oh, this is Portugal. Nothing ever changes. Complaints go nowhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
So me and two other moms said, no, we do not accept that. And in December 2014, we co-founded the Portuguese Birthrights Association, where I still volunteer and work. And also, I really did feel like I needed to be able to channel this activism
Yeah.
because activism has no place in the birth room, or at least it shouldn't. It's a very different energy.
Mhm.
You can do a lot with preparation, obviously, and making people aware of their rights, but when you're there, kind of, you don't want to be fighting
Of
with
course.
the obstetrician, even if you're speaking out. So I felt it was a different energy. So yeah, I kind of have been on both these arenas that to me are really complementary because I feel like really you can't fool me when we're in the association. If I were just in the association, I think it'd be so easy to just come to these meetings and these conferences and even with members of parliament and like, oh no, people are really trying. This is oh no, things are okay. But when every month you are at a birth, public or private, or you see struggles that your clients have, and it kind of they inform each other. If I've had situations I have seen with clients or lived with clients that have really kind of sparked me and other members of the association. So there's sparked campaigns or posts
Mhm.
or requests that I think you really need. I think you really need to get your hands dirty. It's very easy to
Yeah.
just be, in the politeness of it all.
Yeah, but that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't actually.
No. Then the message isn't clear yet.
Yeah, no, you really need to kind of tell them what's going on, and obviously without mentioning names, just being able to say, well, actually, I was in your hospital last month,
Yeah.
and this happened, and she wasn't taken seriously.
But you're talking about like the Portuguese maternity care system isn't about to change or at least people say it's not going to change. But what I feel like is that you were living the change, right?
No, I feel it has changed. I've had three children in this system. I have a 20-year-old boy, a
Mhm.
14-year-old boy, and a 6-year-old girl. And I see change. I see some good, some bad. Some things have deteriorated, others have gotten much better.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sarah, maybe for someone who does not know the system, how would you describe the current state of maternity care in Portugal?
So the Portuguese system is very conservative. I think we can't forget that. It's very conservative. It's very hierarchical. And it's mainly still built on doctors know best.
Yeah.
Doctor knows best. So even when you have, and we do have the SNS or the Portuguese NHS, midwives don't have as much autonomy as they should.
Okay. Just shortly breaking into this episode to explain to you what the SNS is. The SNS is Portugal's National Health Service. It's free, open to everyone, including expats, but for maternity care, here how it works in practice. You don't just show up at your local hospital when you're in labor. You call a national number first and they direct you to a hospital that has capacity that night. In Lisbon, some hospitals have actually closed their doors during peak periods because of staff shortages. There's an app where you can check which hospital is open. Scans and appointments during pregnancy are covered, but waiting times can be really long. Many women in Portugal combine public and private, doing their prenatal care privately and then giving birth in the SNS, or the other way around. You can simply mix and match. Midwives work within the SNS but have limited autonomy compared to countries like the UK or the Netherlands. An obstetrician is almost always leading the show. And if you want continuity of care, meaning the same person with you throughout the pregnancy and birth, you won't find that in the SNS, unfortunately. For that, you go private or you hire an independent midwife for a home birth, or of course a doula who can follow you along the way.
Because there's a big grip from obstetricians and doctors in general not to lose that territory. Even though they are incredibly short staffed, and
Mm-hmm.
our view in the association, and we have recently shared a post about that, we do need actually more midwives. And to us, more midwifery care, more autonomy for midwives would really be the key to solving a whole lot of problems that we are facing currently in Portugal with short staffness and things. One thing that really characterizes the Portuguese system as well is the lack of continuity of care. That the
Mhm.
evidence has already demonstrated that it's safer for moms and babies. So if you want continuity of care, you have to go private, either to a private hospital or with a private midwife having a home birth.
And what's holding it back then?
Well, policies, the obstetricians, the doctors, the way the system is built, you know?
It's like, is it like we've always done it like this, so that's why we're doing it?
No, because we used to do it better, honestly. And
Okay.
you do see some projects where, especially up north, you see some great examples of in smaller communities where there's caseload midwifery, which is a big thing. Where actually it's even better for, and there's lots of studies about that in the UK, where actually even the professional satisfaction is better if they have their own clients or, you know, patience, if you will. Yeah, but because it's very fragmented, they're short staffed. It's kind of, yeah, kind of tore down a system that used to be better in some ways.
And what was better then?
Well, the fact that you had open hospitals for starters was already good.
Mhm.
Right, and we also joke a lot in the association, like, our first campaign was for water birth in hospitals, and now we campaign for please open the doors so we don't have to call a number to be admitted here. Can we please at least know which hospital we're gonna have the baby in? So yeah.
But one of the issue is you might also go to the hospital and the door will be closed because they are understaffed, right?
Yeah, this has been very gradual. This is very specific to Lisbon. I think it's important to say that this isn't happening necessarily all over the country. As a general rule, we can say that the North has more options and is
Mhm.
more aligned with evidence, more midwifery projects as well. And then as you go down, I mean, if you imagine Portugal is a rectangular, right? As you go down, there's less and less options. So this started in Greater Lisbon, where some hospitals basically because of the obstetricians' holidays, they did not tag team to make sure that it was always open.
Wow.
When there aren't enough obstetricians in an emergency room, it cannot be open, even if you have midwives, neonatologists, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Hey, but
So
hearing this as when you're pregnant for the first time, second time, maybe third time, it's also kind of scary, no?
absolutely. Yes, it is very scary because it adds a layer of uncertainty that you certainly do not need when you're
Yeah.
pregnant. But just to kind of say kind of continue with this. So this started, usually it was just like in the summer months. Then it started to be the summer months and Christmas.
Mhm.
And then it was always. And so this is the situation now. It's gotten a little better here and there. Then they kind of invented an app where you could check which hospital. And we've talked about this in the association publicly many times. Like, can you imagine having contractions, opening an app, and finding out tonight which hospital is open?
It's like really you don't want to be thinking
It's
about it.
ridiculous, and it's against physiology and all we know about what women need at this time.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what you say it used to be an exceptional situation that just became the norm here. And I do see that a lot of patients that have access to private care and that can afford private, then they leave SNS and they choose to go to a private hospital. But there, maybe they don't really know what to expect. I guess when you go to private, you feel that the care will be much better. But what is the reality of the private hospital when you choose to give birth there?
Yeah, I think there is this view of, and when we look at private and public and how do we choose, there's advantages and disadvantages on both
Mhm.
sides. But with the private, I think what big part of the appeal is that the partner can then stay the night and you have your private room in the postpartum. So that's a big one. And I completely understand, right?
Whereas in the public, you have to share the rooms and then you have hours of visits. Yeah.
Yeah, so something to, because sometimes people are confused in this and they think they're going to birth in a collective room. No. So you are in an individual room if you're in labor and when you have the baby and then the 2 hours after recovery. But when you're in the postpartum, you might have another lady or two or three or four, depending on the hospital and the postpartum wards in the next days. So in private, you have your private room for after, and you have your own obstetrician who will be called then when you go into labor.
So you have a continuity of care, which is like something that as you were saying before, is very important for your pregnancy journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that is a big point of appeal, and Michelle O'Donnell has said many times, one of the needs of women in labor is this continuity of care, knowing who is going to be there. So we cannot blame, as I've heard, we can't blame women for choosing private because that's the appeal. The
Mhm.
reality of it is very different because
Yeah.
it's a business and the obstetrician earns per birth. So
Yeah.
there is much more incentive to book your induction or your C-section. And some are really open about it. It's like, "Don't you wanna birth with me? Aren't you tired of being pregnant? Let's just book your induction or your C-section," and all of that. Also, the numbers don't lie
Yeah, the statistics are there. The C-section rate is much higher in private hospitals in Portugal.
completely, yeah,
And
so
Yeah.
episiotomy as well. If you look at the European rates and average, it's something like twice higher. So as you said, the numbers are not lying around a medical intervention.
yeah, so the C-section rate, ideally, through the World Health Organization's recommendation, should be 10 to 15% for a country. It's 30% in public, 67% in private,
Yeah, that
Wow,
which is
it's
insane. I
huge.
think just that is enough to make
and
you
that's
go,
not because of the birth or the women's bodies, because they're the same in other countries. So
"Exactly."
there's something going wrong with the system, of course. Yeah.
They earn more money, and the other day we're having a laugh in a doula group, like, "I get it. I wish I could book my births. It's so much easier, for sure. But then you go work at Social Security if you wanna do a 9 to 5." So, there is no incentive whatsoever to
Yeah.
kind of support physiology.
Yeah.
And what does Portugal need at the moment to bring it back to like the more physiological birth standard?
We don't need much, actually, because what we see is that what women are asking, what the evidence says, is what the law says. And we actually have
Uh-huh.
very progressive laws. So we have a law that was approved in 2019 that actually, among many other things, says that the World Health Organization's recommendations are law abiding. So basically, we need people to make sure the law is being followed. We need training
Mhm.
for health professionals. And we need training in which they understand the legal context in which they work because they don't.
Yeah.
One of the big issues is that they think they have much more responsibility than they actually do. That's why they fear the birth plan so much. They don't understand it. Actually, it is covering their backs if they're following a woman's birth plan because it's there in writing that she's choosing this and she is also taking responsibility for that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they intervene much sooner because also they think they have that responsibility. So it's a bit twisted.
So if you're like a pregnant lady listening to this now, I can imagine you're like, "Ugh, I have to give birth in Portugal. Oh no." Well, I can imagine it brings up that feeling. But what would you say to like a pregnant lady in Portugal at the moment? What's the most important thing if she's gonna give birth in the system? Either it's a home birth or a hospital birth, it's both in the system. What would you say to her now?
Yeah. So also something I want to say is that Portugal can be a great place to have a baby. In an ideal world, your local hospital would be the best place just because it's closer. But I think you still need to know where to look. And you do have both private and public options where there's more midwifery care, where they're more used to doulas and birth plans. And some people mix and match. So you might have your private OB throughout, the pregnancy because something that we do notice as well is that it's sometimes hard, yes, to book, especially if you're dealing with residency and whatnot, to have kind of timely scans and exams through public. So even if you have like your private care, you can still birth in public or vice versa. You can hire an independent midwife and have a home birth
Yeah.
if that's what you want. Some people hire a midwife anyway if they're going to be birthing in hospital. So you can mix and match, definitely.
Mm-hmm. But I can imagine if you're like in the obstetrician's room and the obstetrician says, "Oh, you look so tired. Well, let's end this pregnancy. Like, okay, let's plan an induction or like you're 40 weeks, 3 days. Well, let's plan an induction at 41 weeks." What do you need to do as a pregnant woman? What is the preparation you need for this?
Yeah, I think again, I think those cues and red flags are kind of revealed throughout the care. I think
Mhm.
it's very rare that you have an amazing experience with your OB throughout, and then all of a sudden this happens. I
Yeah.
think also the door opens from the inside. And some people really kind of, maybe it's a feeling like every time you get out of that appointment, you feel unsettled or you feel fearful. Maybe you can't put your finger on it, but you know something's off.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's never too late to change obstetricians if they say that.
Yeah.
But if you, yeah, I mean, if they only say that, it's never too late to change.
Mhm.
And you can say thanks, but no thanks, or show me the evidence. But if I'm honest, you really need to make that decision of, do you really want to be fighting every step of the way throughout your birth with that person? Or is it better to change now or go
Yeah.
somewhere else, even if
Yeah.
you are 41 weeks pregnant? And I've
Yeah.
supported many ladies like that as a doula. And some people say no, and that's valid. I really want to say that there's obviously kind of physiology is aligned with evidence and that matters, but sometimes people will make choices that are not evidence based. It has
Mhm.
to do with the history, where they feel safe, and what ultimately feels good to them, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
respecting their choice. When you're pregnant in Portugal, you do know that at some point there will be pressure to induce you when you go over 40. So, my question is, do you see a lot of women being able to take the time and going even over 42 weeks? Is it something that is possible here in Portugal, whether it's in the SNS or in the private system?
Yes, it is. I think it's easier in the SNS for sure. I myself had a baby at 42 and a half weeks
Okay.
with my second, and it was like, catch, come get me if you want. I'm not showing up. But again, I also recognize that it was not my first baby. So you couldn't fool me as easily, right?
Yeah.
But yes, I have worked with many people who really just felt, actually, no, I don't. But it must be said that they really bring out the heavy guns. And something that is very perverse in both private and public is that they don't book you any more appointments after 40 weeks. You are basically on your own. So how we go about it is we then go through the urgências and say, hey, I just want to make sure everything is okay. Do the CTG. It might make sense after 40, 41 weeks to check if fluid amounts are still at a good
Exactly. Yeah.
level and whatnot. But it's incredibly brave because these women know what they're going to hear, and they hear a bunch of non-evidence based scenarios and blackmail and lies, really. You can do it, nobody, the thing with the law is that the law is above hospital procedure. So when they say, "Oh, it's a
Mhm.
procedure," but the law is above the procedure, so I don't care what your procedure is.
Yeah.
And when you look at the evidence, if everything is okay, you're better off waiting, because they usually do not frame the question as in, "Look, you're overdue." They basically just say, "Oh, there is more of a chance of stillbirth." Of course, this is super, super scary for anybody. Like,
Yeah, but
okay,
it goes
of
from
course.
like 0.01% to
Exactly. Like,
0.02%
a little bit more.
over 42 weeks, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
but so we need to do it. They don't say, look, we want to do this procedure that actually is gonna bring more chance of the baby going into distress.
Yeah.
Contractions in an induction are longer, stronger, and closer together. There's
Yeah.
Yeah.
more chance and risk of you ending up with an instrumented birth or a C-section. Do you want it? That's not what
Yeah.
they say.
Yeah.
It's illegal, really.
And you know what? I had the most amazing obstetrician for my first pregnancy and my second, actually. And she didn't mention it, even though she was amazing. But she didn't mention that after the induction, the labor might be stronger and faster. And of course, as you said, when it's you start artificially, it can trigger a cascade of intervention. So like the stronger contraction and an increased pain, then you ask the epidural, maybe quicker, and then it reduce mobility. But so I think that this knowledge is so important. And if you want to take the right decision for yourself, you need this information. And if the doctors are not telling you that, I don't know who, like it's really hard to get access to evidence-based info. And actually, I guess also today we might have too much also social media and everything you're hearing. So how would you advise women to have the right amount of information and the good ones to have access to that?
I think it's important to go to good sources. That's the problem with the internet. The information is not sorted out for you. You might end up in a crazy forum, or you might end up in the Cochrane collaboration that is actually very valid. But I would say definitely the team that you have, because I had a doula for my second and third baby. I had two doulas, and I think it's somebody who will help you sort out that information, not decide for you, but definitely kind of help you. Where can I find more information? Do you want more information on this or not? But definitely, yeah. But if you just Google evidence induction, risks induction, you will find things. I think it's having that curiosity to go and find it. And what is this, how do you feel? Again, what does your intuition say, right?
Yeah.
Is it telling me I actually feel safer booking this? Or actually something feels off, I don't want it. And
Mhm.
that will go a long way. I've really learned to listen to that. I've had very crazy stories of that. So I really feel that when women really want something, they know better, even if it feels a bit.
Mm,
And I do remember that beautiful full moon of your first birth
yeah.
just arrived. Contractions were happening, but these still felt very early.
So Sarah was my doula, just for the context. So Sarah was this is how I met Sarah. She was my doula for my first pregnancy.
And then you're just saying, like, I want to go. I want to go now. In my mind, I'm like, why would we go so soon? Let's stay here a bit more. It was during the pandemic, so I knew I wouldn't be able to make it past a
True.
certain point. But they were very adamant. I think women really just know. I said, no, I want to go. And we arrived, and sure enough, it was 2 centimeters. It took a while, that whole thing. Beautiful. And then on the next day, a midwife friend who works there, who I usually kind of contact, hey, I'm going there with a woman, are you there? Blah, blah, blah. And she said, I'm so glad you guys went to the hospital when you did, because a half hour after, I don't know what happened. Every woman in Lisbon came and we were full.
It was so full.
Wow.
She
And
was
you know
right.
what? I remember during those long 24 hours of labor, I keep hearing all the moms giving birth and pushing and giving birth. And I was like, why my baby is not coming? Yeah, I remember that very well. But yes, it was a good
Really
timing.
just this feeling of they know. And I don't know,
Yeah.
just something told you
Yeah.
like, this is where I need to be, you know? Uh,
Yeah. Never underestimate a mom's intuition, a woman's
Never.
intuition, actually. Yeah, but like here in Western countries, we're far away from intuition. Most cases, we're living in our heads. Like bodies are stressed, etc. So I can imagine, like for women to look for information online, etc. It's also a discussion. Like, shouldn't it be the system that provides that information? Of course,
Absolutely.
it's a dream. It's a dream,
But it
you know.
should.
But
Yeah.
it's crazy if women have to check for themselves, like what's okay and what not.
But that's the thing. It's
Yeah,
really unfair.
it
Because here
is.
we are telling them where to research when actually it's professionals' responsibility. And that's in the law I mentioned.
Yeah.
That law says that they have to, by 36 weeks, to have discussed the birth plan, managed expectations, and give all this information. So this is something you should be getting. But because you don't, you almost need to take a PhD in obstetrics, which is
Yeah.
sad because that also breaks the trust that people have in institutions and professionals, and might steer them away from care that they need. It kind of breaks that intuition even, I would say.
Yeah. We can't all turn into mini doulas, like because of all the information we need to get in order to have a safe birth for ourselves. Yeah.
Maybe let's talk about this responsibility, Sarah, because if anything happens to you that's really seems off, something happened at the hospital, either, you didn't give your consent or to a medical intervention, or you feel that you were told lies, or you were pressured. That's also something very tricky. You are super vulnerable, you are in the postpartum, and sometimes you just really want to forget about that bad experience. But if we want the system to change, it's also really important to say to the woman that they have a voice and there are things they can do and they can get support. So what would you recommend to women that had these really bad experiences in hospital?
Yeah. So, and again, I feel like there's the two hats. So the doula in me would try to understand what is going to help her more What does she
Mhm.
feel she needs? Does she
Mhm.
need is this gonna help her get past this? And she wants and mostly they actually wanna do it for very selfless reasons, for something like, "I don't want other women to go through this." It's actually very much like that. If that's the case, it's important to let them know that they have 6 months, which is nothing when you've just had a baby. They have 6 months to make a formal complaint that means something in court. Once the 6 months have passed, you can do other things, but it's
Mhm.
as thorough or as deep, or even when they don't know the name, is just the best way of
Mm.
complaining if you wanna go to court. But letting them know that they can make a complaint to the hospital itself, the doctor's order or the midwife's order.
Yeah.
If you know the specific name of the midwife, nurse, or doctor, and also to the entity that regulates the health services as
Mhm.
well. You can make a complaint to the Portuguese Birthrights Association. So we help with that. So we tell them that these are the ways that in which you can complain. What do you want to do? You can leave a review in our birth advisor website. But again, you need to be very careful that you're not re-traumatizing the woman,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
telling it again can be extremely traumatizing. And
Mhm.
most campaigns about break the silence are not trauma informed. And retelling the story can be a way of re-victimizing the person, having her relive the experience. So we really
Can
have to be
imagine.
very careful about
Yeah,
that.
that's
Yeah.
a really important thing to
Yeah.
tell, to be able to take that decision because it's so, as you said, it will be an emotional
Yeah.
exposure, and you might have to tell again and again and again the same story, maybe go to the court. So you need to be prepared for that. I think you are right to say it.
It's not for everyone. Definitely not for everyone.
So, Sarah, felt that once we spoke about that topic, I do see the importance of being able to put words and to be able to tell the story of your birth. What would you recommend as a doula to any woman in postpartum right after birth? How can we do that exercise?
Yeah. So something that is very important and that is usually is the topic of the last session I kind of do with couples is the debrief session. So kind of talking about the birth. And what is very interesting is that maybe I will remember certain parts of the birth, dad or the other mom will remember other parts of the birth, and the woman for the first time she has the chance to verbalize things that were going through her mind that
Mhm.
maybe she didn't express because she was, in an altered state, or she was frozen, or she was scared. And together, kind of stitching together this story is very important.
Yeah.
Be it to, hey, celebrate the bits that went amazing, grieve the bits that didn't. And there's two parts to this. It can be that sometimes clinically things just are different and it's the death of the dream. But when it's a difficult story because of things that were done to her, it's important to integrate that
Mhm.
and just to make sure that those things are being spoken in a safe space and given context as well, you know? Because many people maybe might just dismiss it. And the whole world usually tells the woman, oh, you have such a beautiful baby.
Yeah,
As long
yeah,
as the baby is healthy, as long as you're still alive. Yeah.
So kind of really validating it, what you feel matters. And maybe on the outside, it doesn't have to be a big, awful story, but maybe from the outside, it was this picture perfect home birth, but there was a moment where you felt very disempowered, or you felt you weren't listened to, or you felt abandoned, or anything is valid. And if the woman feels it and experiences it as traumatic, it is. So believe women. I think in this era that we're living now is, if we take nothing from this message is believe women. What they want, what they fear, what they understand. So this debrief session is very important, and yeah, some people do it with somebody they trust. Some people do it even, some people want to go to the hospital and kind of discuss that with them.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of tricky.
Yeah.
yeah. And I remember that because you are really trying to stay in your bubble, you really lose perspective of time. And I remember when we were recollecting the pieces to tell the birth stories for the first and the second one, my partner did explain a lot of things that happened, and I had really different perspectives. So it was also
Yeah.
kind of nice. This is what happened, really. So just like having like the proper story, and you need those different voices and
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and when important to realize as well, this is not a pro-natural at all costs. Sometimes when people experience their birth as traumatic or unpleasant, it's not so much where the birth diverged from the ideal birth plan. It's
Mhm.
where she felt she lost control. And
Yeah.
people started doing things to her that she didn't know what they were or didn't consent. Many people will know, well, I needed a C-section in the end, but I understand exactly what happened. I was involved in the
Yes.
decision making.
Yeah.
And I am so glad they did that C-section to save my baby or because I was, had an infection or whatnot. So you're always in the loop. And I love hearing that sometimes. Like it's nothing how I planned it or envisioned it, but I was so empowered. And they
Yeah.
really asked me, and it was my decision to do this. Or I don't want pain relief. And then in the end, I did. I'm so glad I did, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can
I'm glad you're
imagine.
saying that. It's so important, I think, for all the future moms and moms that are listening to that, just to know that differing from the birth plan doesn't mean you're not going to have a beautiful and respectful birth. And the basics of respectful is consent.
Yes.
So yeah, it's also nice, I guess, to know that it's not about being in control of every single thing, because of course birth never happen how you picture it. Never.
No.
Sometimes it does, yeah. But that's,
Sometimes it does, but in most cases it
yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah, that's life. Birth and life,
That's
right? Yeah.
life, yeah. Plans are there to change, right? Hey, and looking at the future of Portugal, what gives you hope today?
Love hearing that there are more doulas and more activists. And I think there's more and more people. I think in the beginning we felt like we were the only ones. Hey, there's something wrong here. And
Yeah.
now it's more generalized. That gives me hope, I think. I see many health professionals who are amazing as well and who want change and want to practice differently. So that gives me hope. I think people give me hope in general.
Mhm.
I always believe that the best of nature, human nature, will prevail. I keep believing every day. So, yeah, no, absolutely.
And where do you think the Portuguese maternity care system or maybe the Portuguese birth culture will stand in 10 years from now?
I think in 10 years, hopefully, we'll look back and be like, oh my God, remember how things were? We have an inside joke with the founders of the associations, like, we say, so that one day our daughters can say, really? It was like that?
Yeah.
It was another time.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
When I was young, like in that, when I was young, things were done
Yeah.
this way, but
Yeah.
now things are different.
Yeah.
That's
let's hope
amazing.
for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys for doing this. It's amazing.
Yeah, and really want to thank you for all the women out there, because you're part of the change. You're also the reason why now the Ordem or Deutsche Medicus is hearing more, is more aware. You're creating that bridge and communicate, and I think this is so important. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing with the association. If you're listening and you want to invest your time and you think it's a topic that you want to just add some of your time and energy, we will put the link of the association, of course.
Join
And
us.
thanks for
Absolutely.
your beautiful work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Born to Be Wild, the podcast. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find us on Instagram at borntobewild.pt and birth mode. We would love to hear from you.
All sources and references mentioned in this episode are in the show notes below. And if you enjoy this episode, of course, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. It's really the best way to help us grow. See you next time.